Hello, I'm Steph from iDriver Classic, and today we are looking at one of the most beloved family members we have. It is, of course, Freddie's Land Rover Defender from 1993. Now, this is a Defender 90 pickup. It was once a van and it's now a pickup, and apparently in its life it's swapped around a few times. Now, Freddie uses this every single day. He doesn't just use it to get to work and battle through the bad weather of West Yorkshire. He also uses it to go off-roading, which might explain some of the bits like this. So the car that you're seeing today, or the truck as some people know it, really is a labour of love, and it is a vehicle which is so used, loved and enjoyed, and used in the way I think that Land Rovers really should be, because so many people have these now as show ponies, and it is such a shame. So come on, let's have a look at this well-loved Land Rover Defender. The Land Rover Defender is a vehicle which has a varied fan base across the world, from the British Army and the Royal Family, right through to farmers, emergency workers and people across the world who need a vehicle which will do it all. The story of the Defender doesn't begin in 1990 when it came to market, but instead much earlier in the roots of what Land Rover had done before. So Land Rover pre-1990 had of course had the highly successful series cars, which had given them such an enormous worldwide fan base. And look, even today you'll still see them everywhere, from rural sleepy England right through to the outback in Australia and far-flung corners of Asia. And sometimes it's mad when you go travelling and see these things and you think, wow, that is so far away from Birmingham. Now, after the series range, Land Rover introduced the Land Rover 110 in 1983, and that naming convention represented the wheelbase of 110 inches. They also did a shorter wheelbase, which they introduced in 1984, which is the 90. Although the wheelbase on this is just slightly over 90 inches, I think it's 92.9. And then you've also got the 127, which is the biggest in the range. And really, it wasn't introduced for the domestic market, but more for the heavy going user, people like the army, the emergency services, and so on. And I've personally seen them liveried up for use by the fire brigade. And now at the end of the 80s, you then get the introduction of the Discovery, which actually prompts Land Rover to give the range a bit of a shake-up. So they then renamed the 90 and the 110 to the Defender 90 and 110 respectively. It's also worth mentioning that the Discovery, while slightly more refined and suited to families, in such as what we had as a family, also filled that mid-gap because that was a 100-inch wheelbase. Although the earlier pre-89 cars aren't strictly called a Defender, you'll often find people naturally calling them that due to the later name change and the similarity between the cars and the later Defender badge models. Now, despite having the boxy feel of the series cars, there were some really big changes that Land Rover made to reflect. It was a bit of a reflection really to what competitors were doing, modernisation and the growing need of the global market. So some of these included, and the biggies are, coil springs, which replaced the leaf springs which they'd used on the series, a permanent four-wheel drive system, which by the way wasn't new because they'd been using it in the Range Rover, a modern feeling interior. It's a big step up in these from like the series, that one-piece screen, and predictably, of course, as you would expect, engine improvements, especially as the range developed, alongside many other smaller tweaks to take the cars up to the next level. A lot of these changes made the cars much easier to drive, and that is really a basis on the kind of what you've got in the outgoing series, which then in turn expands Land Rover's market to a new audience, which is the domestic user who fancies something a little bit more rugged but more refined than the experience they would have had in the series, which probably explains the end user today. Now, in 1990, the Defender is officially introduced, and with it the engine we've got here today, the turbo diesel 200 TDI, which was a big step up from the 2.5 litre engine which had come before it. So some of the biggie changes include the alloy cylinder head, the intercooling, the direct injection, and crucially, a direct set of workarounds for some of the problems in the 80s, because the cars had failed due to basically rebreathing their own sump oil, so they got around all of that as well. Now, the new engine gave higher cruising speeds but also improved towing capability. Now, a brochure from the time boasts the capability to tow up to 3,850 kilograms, which for those of you that work in old money is £8,487, which means it lends itself nicely to pretty much every job at hand. Now this one we're testing here today isn't precisely as it left the factory, and plenty of valuable work has been undertaken by Fred and previous owners, with works including a fully galved chassis, hybridised Garrett turbo, a big aluminium front mounted intercooler. You've got that Roma Drive overdrive kit, which we'll talk about later, the bulkhead replacement, which is not a small job by the way, uprated bearings within the gearbox, and plenty of other finer touches to improve both ownership and the driving experience. Sadly, the Land Rover of today is all but a name in comparison to the classic shape Defender we're testing right now. Now these are still commanding high prices, these classic shapes, and are very desirable and also very stealable. So if you're getting one, make sure you invest in a quick look or something. And most importantly, still the car that most people think of when you say, I'm heading out today in my Land Rover Defender. But as every owner knows, there's always room for improvement. So here's Freddie telling us his plans for 2025.
Hi there, I'm Freddie, Steph's partner. This is my dream car, the Land Rover Defender. They've been in my family for years with Discoveries and Defenders, and recently my brother's just picked one up. So for 2025, my plans with this are a few extra modifications than what it's already got. I'm going to go for a lift kit, potentially 4-inch, bigger tyres and wheels, well, smaller wheels, bigger tyres, and even more off-roading. If you'd like to watch the action, we're actually on a Instagram page called Mud and Rubber. That's at Mud and Rubber. That's where me, my brother and a few other friends with trucks all do off-roading days. So you're welcome to watch.
Nothing can instill terror in you like sitting in the driving seat of someone's most beloved pride and joy, and I feel very scared right now. I have never driven this, by the way, so today is a whole new experience. However, I have been in the passenger seat many a time, so I can walk you through the dash with a fairly good degree of confidence. Now, first of all, that's my domain over there, the glove box area, and usually that is filled with all the bits we need, from old rags, various bits and pieces, little bits of tools, sweets, everything that we need for our adventures is in that glove box section, and it's nice and big, so you can fit everything in there. Coming into the centre, you might look at the dash and say to me, Steph, it's a little bit chopped out. Now this is the thing, is Freddie bought this to use and enjoy, and one of the things that came with this was the dash that somebody else had chopped out. So he did tell me after he'd filmed his section, he said, oh, should probably mention as well that I'm going to sort that dash out this year. So to the centre of this, you've got 3 gauges. You've got your clock, you've got your voltmeter, and you've got your oil pressure gauge, and coming down from there you've got a series of switches. Now these switches aren't all working at the moment. The only one that works is this one on the far left, and that is for the big searchlight on top of the vehicle. Now that does only get used when they go off-roading, but it's really great because if somebody's stuck and they need to get them out, that gives you so much light. It's crazy. Fred turned it on when we were out one night, and it honestly lit everything up like someone had just pulled the sun out. It was marvellous. Now coming across from there, everything is again marvellously simple, but something I will say is that there are things that you probably will recognise if you are a bit of a BL fanatic like myself. Things like the indicators. Now these are the same, I think, as my Mark 1 Metro. They're used on something that I've owned, and it might be an Allegro as well, but look, it's a BL parts bin special, same as the wipers on the right hand side as well. Coming in front of us, we've got a few more gauges. So we've got our speedometer with a trip clock inside. Now I was talking to Freddie and I said, what do you reckon you're getting out of this? Because I've seen him do 65 on the motorway, and he said, well, top speed from my experience is about 65, but he said, really, I don't like to push it because it doesn't feel very comfortable, so I usually sit top speed around 60, which means that a lot of people see stuff like this and don't always realise that it is very usable on the motorway. But if you're quite happy to sit in the slow lane with a bit of overtaking of lorries, it can be very much done. Coming over from there, you've got your fuel gauge, you've got your temperature gauge, and you've got the turbo. Now the turbo gauge isn't actually working at the moment, but it's one of those things, isn't it? Isn't every classic car a work in progress? They're never finished. That's that's why it's a hobby and not just a means of getting from A to B. Coming down from there, we've got a selection of warning lights, and over on the right hand side, the most redundant bit of the car, which is the heater controls. It's never had a heater whilst Fred's owned it, which probably explains my reticence to jump in the winter, because I mean, I don't know if you can see my hands at home, but I'm absolutely frozen. Coming down from there, there's a series of redundant switches. Nothing's really going on with them, and that pretty much sums up all our controls. Now you'll notice that the setup inside this cab is 2 seats with the mid box here. Now you can set it up instead to have 3 seats across the front, but unless you want to sit and do the splits to accommodate this area around here, this mid box is really great. And again, it's full of all the bits that we need for our trips and all the various other bits and pieces. And also, if you go out and get a bit of shopping, you can pop it in here. It just makes it a little bit more usable, because you can't put your shopping in the back because people are going to half-inch it, aren't they? Now coming down from there, you've got your diff lock, which probably won't be able to show you today because we're just going to be doing a bit of trundling around the roads of West Yorkshire. And then you've got this. Now you might miss this if you're just looking through the window at the show, but this is the overdrive. Now this is not to be sniffed at. This was put in the 90s, and it would have been a really expensive optional extra to put in, because most people just have those 5 standard gears, whereas this was something that somebody would have put in and it would have cost a lot of money, and that is active on the top 2 gears. That's 4th and 5th. Now in terms of your gearbox, I think it's, I keep getting this wrong, I think it's the R380, and it's the one that's come out of it is the L something something. I'll put a little note over the top. Now these tend to be paired with the 300 TDIs instead of the 200s like we've got in this. So this is something that someone's put in later on. As I was talking to you about earlier when we were walking around, there are a lot of different things that people have done to this car. There's been a lot of money spent on it, but crucially, it's not just on little things like this on the overdrive. It's things like the fully galved chassis. It's the fact it's the bulkhead as well. The money that's been spent has been spent well. So whilst the bodywork, you might look round and you might notice there's an awful lot of mud in here, really putting that mud in the mud and rubber. It's a vehicle which is really holding its own. It's a solid bit of kit, and it's just being enjoyed in the way that Land Rovers really should be. Now there's a little bit of an interesting one, is that the original gearbox, when you went into reverse, you would have gone across and up, like up into the far left, but with this being this later gearbox, it's across and down on the far right. So anyway, just a little note there. So if you ever see it in this, you'll know that it's been changed over, and you'll know, won't you? So that's kind of everything in a nutshell that we've got going on in here. Let me start it up for you. Now, of course, I can't find the key. There we go. I'm so used to the key in mine being on this side. Hold on. Might help if I push the accelerator down instead of the brake. You can tell it's been a long week. Hey, that doesn't sound bad. Come and have a listen from the back, but hold your nose because it's a wee bit smoky. Right, let's go on an adventure. Before we set off, I have never driven this, so if it all goes really horribly wrong, well, we'll just start again, but I might just keep it in. But the bottom of my shoe has already fallen off, so it's going well. Now it has got power steering, which means it's probably going to be easier than I anticipate. Okay, this is easier than I thought it was going to be. I mean, I am only driving across the train station car park at this very moment in time. I have feared driving this for so long because I thought it was going to be like the hardest thing, because really the only thing that I've ever driven Land Rover wise is a series, and they're so blooming heavy, and I thought this was going to be the same, but I actually didn't know until Fred briefed me today that it had power steering. I thought that everyone was just kind of strong arming it around in this. I didn't know. Actually, it's a piece of cake to drive. It's lighter than the Proton, and yet here I am absolutely sweating about driving it. But here is where the real adventure begins, because we're going to go out on the road together. Oh. Oh, I quite like it actually. Oh, this is quite fun. I feel like I'm overcoming some sort of grand fear with you all at home, and it's such a nice thing to drive. I'm actually quite enjoying this. Now, why am I enjoying it? Because you're probably wondering, after fearing it for so long, I guess. Oh, by the way, we'll just wave to our friends, our Land Rover friends. Jagger. Hi, Jagger. Okay, anyway, back to the car, because I'm rambling away as we drive along. The visibility, first of all, is just fabulous, isn't it? Because I'm sitting up nice and high. It's a lovely boxy shape, so I'm not having to worry about hidden corners and things that I can't see. And I'm just milling along and it's easy enough. Now, Fred did say to me, oh, well, you know, the accelerator is a wee bit heavy, but actually, it's not too bad at all. And now that I've got into the swing of it, changing this gearbox, it doesn't feel as notchy as I first thought. And in fact, I'm almost getting exactly why Freddie really likes this. And I find it hilarious that it's easier to drive this than my clunky old Proton, which is the same age as this. Well, actually, it's a year newer. Now, the one thing I will say is that as we come round, you can feel that it is very much an agricultural vehicle, because unlike your saloons and things like that, they will cushion you a little bit more from the potholes of the roads. This is just chucking me around, but I'm absolutely fine with it, because when you get into a Land Rover, you aren't expecting a refined driving experience. You're expecting to be chucked around a bit, have a bit of fun. But also, it does feel very usable in a way that I wasn't particularly expecting. And I don't know if you would at home if you've never driven one, because I just had these preconceived ideas that it was going to be heavy, that it was going to feel sluggish. And sure, I'm putting my foot down and it's certainly not whizzing away like a saloon might do of the same age. But you don't always need that. For something like this, you've got that towing capability. We have some terrible weather near us, and this vehicle has been invaluable on so many occasions, not only for helping us and getting us out of tight spots, but getting other people out of tight spots as well. Now, the one thing I will say is that if you are looking at one of these to buy, is go for one with as little rot on as possible, because as we talked about in some of the recent restoration videos on the standard, bodywork is such an expensive beast to start chasing, because you chase and you chase and you chase, and you tend to find that what you see at first is only such a small percentage of what you're going to find. But all is not lost, because if you do need to start off on a really rough project, there is so much help out there, and the parts availability is absolutely exceptional. Everything you need is out there. Everything you may want, you can find. They do Land Rover second-hand swap meet days. There's various suppliers. I know that Freddie and his brother use Paddock for all their bits and pieces. And so everything you need is out there to keep it on the road. There is an enormous community of people. I mean, some of the communities are very different. They're very London-centric, where they're using the vehicles almost as, I would say, toys rather than functioning vehicles. But then you also have off-roading communities. You have really great groups of people, and you also see a lot of young people in them, which is really encouraging, I think, because that for me says that there is going to be a future for these. Because when you find a group of vehicles or a group of, or like a mark, and the only people that are in, oh, find second gear, and the only people that are into it are people that are kind of coming to the end of their driving careers, You think, well, what's the future for that vehicle? Whereas you go out and you see loads of people in Defenders, those early 2000s Discoveries, and you see them having so much fun, and you think, yeah, this isn't a vehicle that you buy into and you think you'll probably get 10 years of a great club seat. You've probably got a lifetime of support that you can use and enjoy your vehicles. Now, to get a half decent-ish one, well, you're not going to be getting much change from £10,000. I say that because Freddie didn't pay that much, but he paid quite a bit. But if you aim for that sort of budget, then your options widen up and you get some really good choices out there. And best of all, you also get that community to support you as well. Now, what are the downsides for this for me? Well, first of all, it is cold. I am freezing. But you know, maybe if there was a heater in here, I could cope with it. The suspension leaves a lot to be desired. I feel like I'm being really thrown about and I'm missing some of those saloon comforts. But look, it's a small price to pay for having a vehicle that you can have loads of fun with, that you can take all your mates out with, and is suited to every occasion. It has been a real privilege taking this out today. I'm very lucky. I can't believe Freddie trusted me, but also I can't believe how easy it is to drive. So will it be my last occasion? I don't think so. But for today and for now, take care and drive safely.